Is it ever too late to fix a broken past? Join us as we navigate the difficult road to redemption and the price of seeking forgiveness in a world that never forgets. Subscribe today and watch these powerful stories of hope and change. The night I handed over my credit card at the venue, my hands were steady. I remember thinking that was strange how calm I felt writing off $12,000 for a party I hadn't been invited to plan. For a milestone that had nothing to do with me. For a man who had stopped seeing me somewhere between year 3 and year 6 of our marriage. My hands were steady, and I smiled at the event coordinator, and I said, "Please make sure the champagne is cold." That was the last nice thing I did for my husband. Let me take you back to the beginning, because the ending only makes sense if you understand how long the beginning actually was. My husband and I met in our late 20s at a mutual friend's housewarming party. He was charming in that specific way that accountants are not supposed to be: charming, loud laugh, good stories, the kind of man who remembers your drink order the second time he meets you. I was 31, working as a senior financial analyst at a mid-sized firm, with a one-bedroom apartment I was genuinely proud of, a savings account I had built carefully over 4 years, and exactly zero interest in getting married anytime soon. And then I met my husband, and all of that careful, sensible thinking went somewhere I still haven't located. We dated for 2 years. He was in commercial real estate, which sounds impressive and is mostly not, but in those early years he carried himself like the success was just around the corner. He talked about deals the way other men talk about sports, with total emotional investment, with statistics, with the kind of certainty that feels contagious. I loved that about him. I loved how much he believed in himself. I did not yet understand that I would spend the next 6 years believing in him on his behalf, with my money, while he directed that belief towards someone else. We got married on a Saturday in October. It was beautiful. I don't say that bitterly, it genuinely was. My mother cried. His mother cried. I wore my grandmother's pearl earrings. For about 14 months after that wedding, things were fine. Not spectacular, but fine. We bought a house together, mostly my down payment, which at the time felt like a partnership decision, and in retrospect was simply the first transaction. He was going to close a big commercial deal that would more than cover his contribution. That deal took 3 years to close, and by the time it did, I had stopped keeping track. Here is the part that is hard to explain to people who haven't lived it. Financial abuse in a marriage doesn't look like theft. It doesn't look like anything dramatic. It looks like a conversation about cash flow that ends with you nodding. It looks like, "Can you cover this month? I have some things tied up," becoming the permanent arrangement without anyone officially announcing that. It looks like your name on every bill, every mortgage statement, every grocery receipt, while his direct deposit goes into an account you have no visibility into, because early in the marriage he mentioned he needed to feel like he had some independence, and you, having read one too many articles about healthy relationship dynamics, said, "Of course, that makes sense. It makes sense." I said that. I actually said that. By year 4, I was covering our mortgage, both car payments, including the lease on his BMW. Which, I want to be clear, I did not choose, and did not want, utilities, groceries, my own student loans, and a quarterly investment into what he described as a real estate holding fund that I later learned was essentially a personal slush account. My salary was good. It was not good enough for all of that. I started bringing lunch from home. I started skipping the yoga membership I'd had for 6 years. I told my best friend I was cutting back, and she looked at me with an expression I now understand was concern that she didn't know how to voice. I never looked at his separate account. I want to be honest about that because the comments always come, "How did you not know?" And the answer is that I trusted him. Not blindly. I trusted him the way you trust the floor to hold you when you walk across a room. You don't think about it. You've done it 1,000 times. The floor has always held. And he was still my husband. He still came home. He still knew my coffee order. He still held my hand at his parents' house on Sundays. The version of our marriage that existed in public was intact, and I had become very good at maintaining it and very practiced at not looking too closely at the version that existed in private, where I was eating crackers for dinner 3 days before payday, and he was apparently eating just fine. His company turned 10 years old in March. He had started it 2 years before we met, a boutique commercial real estate consulting firm with 4 employees, including him. It was his genuine achievement, and I want to give him that. He had built something real. He had worked for it. What he had also done, without my knowledge, was use the stability of our shared life, the house I paid for, the bills I covered, the expenses I absorbed as the financial cushion that allowed him to reinvest every dollar he made back into that company while I ran out of cushion entirely. But I didn't know that yet. What I knew in January was that he wanted to throw a 10-year anniversary party for the firm. Rooftop venue downtown, 60 guests, catered dinner, open bar, professional photographer. He had priced it out. $12,000. I asked where the money was coming from. He looked at me with that expression I had learned to recognize, not quite impatience, not quite dismissal, something in between. Like I had asked a question that revealed a fundamental misunderstanding of how things worked. "I've got a deal closing in Q2, he said. "We can front it, and I'll cover you back after." Front it. I was going to front $12,000 for his company party. I should have said no. I want to tell you that I said no, that I pushed back, that I said something strong and clear that reflected appropriate self-respect. I did not. I said, "Okay, but I'll need to move some things around." And then I moved things around. I transferred money from the emergency fund I had been quietly rebuilding. I put the venue deposit on my card. I coordinated with the caterer because he was too busy with work to handle the logistics. I chose the menu. I confirmed the head count. I arranged the audio system. I did all of this while continuing to pay every other bill we had, and I told myself it was an investment in us, in our future, in the stability that would come when his company kept growing. The night of the party, I wore a navy dress I'd owned for 3 years. I had not bought anything new in a long time. I did my own hair. I drove myself because he had gone ahead early to meet with the event staff, which seemed reasonable and which I did not question. The rooftop was genuinely beautiful. String lights, the city skyline, 60 people in cocktail attire toasting his success. I stood near the bar and felt proud, honestly. He had built this. The company was real, the guests were real, the celebration was earned. I remember having a glass of champagne and thinking maybe this was the turning point. Maybe this was the moment the deal closed, metaphorically speaking, the moment the investment paid back. He gave a speech at 9 o'clock. He thanked his first client. He thanked his business partner. He thanked his assistant, Jordan, who had been with the firm for 7 years and who I had met at exactly 2 company events in 6 years of marriage. He thanked his parents. He thanked what he called the team that built this with me from nothing. He did not say my name. I stood there holding my champagne glass, and I waited, because sometimes people save the most important thank you for last. He wrapped up with a toast to the next 10 years. He raised his glass. Everyone raised theirs. He looked directly at Jordan and said, "Especially to you, I would not be standing here without you." Jordan smiled and put her hand briefly on his arm. And 60 people cheered, and I was standing 12 feet away in a navy dress I'd owned for 3 years, having just paid $12,000 for the night. And my name had not left his mouth once. I set my champagne glass down on the bar. I picked up my purse. I walked to the elevator, and I pressed the button, and I went down 17 floors, and I got in my car, and I sat in the parking garage for 4 minutes not moving. And then I drove home. 23 text messages by the time I got there. 6 voicemails. I read none of them. I went to bed. I stared at the ceiling. In the morning, I got up at 6, made coffee, and opened my laptop. I did not cry. I want to be specific about that because I think people expect a moment of collapse, and mine didn't come that way. What came instead was something quieter and much more dangerous to the life we had built. I opened the household financial spreadsheet I had maintained for 6 years, every mortgage payment, every car payment, every utility, every grocery run, every medical bill, and I added up the total. In 6 years, I had contributed $412,000 to our shared life. I sat with that number for a long time. Then I called my friend Dana. Dana is an attorney. Not a family attorney, she does contracts, but she knows people. She listened to me describe the party, and she was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Maya, I need to ask you something. Do you know what's in his personal accounts?" I did not. She said, "I think you should find out before you have any more conversations with him." I want to say here that what happened next was not vindictive. I did not go looking for ammunition. I went looking for information that I should have had access to all along, about a financial situation that was inextricably mine. As part of the divorce proceedings, because yes, I had already decided. Standing in that parking garage, my attorney requested full financial disclosure. Standard process. He had no choice but to comply. His personal checking account had $91,000 in it. His business account, to which I had no legal claim but which painted a very specific picture, had been profitable for 4 consecutive years. There was a second personal savings account I had never heard of. $47,000. There were quarterly transfers small enough not to stand out, large enough to matter to a recipient my attorney flagged immediately. The amounts ranged from $1,500 to $3,000, roughly every 3 months for the past 2 years. The recipient's name I recognized. I had watched her put her hand on my husband's arm at a rooftop party, while 60 people cheered. I sat in my attorney's office and I looked at those numbers and I thought about the crackers. I thought about the yoga membership I canceled. I thought about the emergency fund I had drained to pay for the champagne he used to toast her. The divorce took 8 months. My attorney was excellent. The settlement included the full equity in the house, which was substantial because I had paid the mortgage for 6 years. It included documented reimbursement for expenses I could prove were unilaterally mine, which thanks to my 6-year spreadsheet was a precise and persuasive number. His hidden savings were considered marital assets. He did not enjoy the discovery process. I was told he described my financial records as obsessive. My attorney described them as decisive. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in April. I took the furniture I had bought. I took the kitchen table I'd had since before I met him. I left his BMW in the driveway, and removed myself from the insurance policy effective the date of separation. For the first 3 months, I did something I had not done in years. I tracked only my own expenses. Not ours. Not his. Mine. My grocery bill dropped significantly. My credit card balance dropped significantly. My chest, somewhere around the 2nd month, began to unclench in a way I had not noticed was clenched. I started talking. First to Dana, then to a therapist, then in a closed online group for women navigating financial recovery after divorce. I am a very private person, and talking did not come naturally, but I found that the more specifically I described what had happened, not the feelings, the actual numbers, the actual mechanisms, the more women said, quietly, that they recognized it. That they were living it. That they hadn't had the language for it. I started writing it down. I am not a writer. I want to be clear about that. What I am is a financial analyst with a very organized mind and a very specific story, and it turned out that combination produced something that other people wanted to read. I started a blog with no expectations, describing in practical terms what financial abuse in a dual-income household actually looks like, what documentation matters, what questions to ask, what I wish I had asked in year 2 instead of year 7. I did not expect anyone to find it. Within 4 months, it had been read by 200,000 people. I received emails I still cannot get through without stopping to collect myself from women who had printed spreadsheet templates from my blog and taken them to attorneys. From women who had finally named what was happening to them because I had named it first. A small press reached out about a book. I said yes before I finished reading the email. The book came out 14 months after the divorce was finalized. I did a reading at an independent bookstore on a Tuesday night in November. I was nervous in the parking lot. I was not nervous at the podium. I read the chapter about the party, the champagne, the speech, the elevator, the parking garage, and the room was very quiet, and then it was not quiet at all. Afterward, a woman waited until everyone else had left. She was maybe 60, with careful eyes, and she held the book with both hands and said, "I've been married for 31 years. I think I need to read this carefully." I signed her copy. I watched her walk out. I drove home to my apartment. I made tea. I sat at my kitchen table, the one I'd had since before I met him, and I thought about that rooftop, and the champagne I'd chosen, and the string lights I'd approved, and the $12,000, and the way my name had not appeared in a single sentence of his speech. And I thought about 200,000 people, and a woman with careful eyes, and a room that went quiet and then didn't. The bill for my humiliation was $12,000. I got considerably more than that back. Not in money, though the settlement was fair. In something I don't have a financial term for, which is unusual for me. The closest I can get is this: for 6 years I paid for someone else's life while quietly disappearing from my own. What came after was simply the work of coming back. It was not fast and it was not graceful, and there were nights in that first apartment when I ate cereal for dinner, not because I couldn't afford anything else, but because I was tired in a way that went past the body. But my name is on one account now. One mortgage. One car. The decisions about what things cost and what they're worth are mine entirely, and I have not once, in the 18 months since I moved out, had to ask permission to buy myself a cup of coffee. If you are sitting somewhere right now recognizing pieces of this story, the account you're not on, the expense you're covering for the third month in a row, the thing you told yourself was a partnership, but that seems to only ever go one direction. I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me in year 3. The spreadsheet I kept for 6 years felt, at the time, like anxiety. Like I was the difficult one, the one who couldn't let money be casual, the one who needed to track everything. What that spreadsheet actually was evidence. And you cannot predict when you'll need evidence, so you keep it. You keep it carefully, and you keep it quietly. And when the moment comes that you need to know exactly what you have contributed, and to what, and for how long, you will be grateful for every line. My name is Maya. I paid for $12,000 worth of champagne and string lights and a speech in which I did not exist. That was the last transaction. Everything after that has been mine.